Welcome to episode 24 of The Guardians, where we talk anything and everything Overwatch. We've got a lot to cover. No funny intro. Let's get into it. All right, so another Friday means another Guardians. I'm here with my buddy One Eye. It's been a crazy week, I think, for both of us because normally we stream like 4 days a week together. I think we streamed one day this week because I've been having some... Maybe one day. Like, I've been having some crazy issues with car dealership, and I've been playing other games and just like doing this vlogging thing. So we need to catch up now. How are you doing? How has your week been?
Well, it's actually funny that you mentioned how hard of a week you've had because I've had one too. I've actually been a little bit sick and I busted myself up a little bit. So there was like a day or two where I couldn't actually work a keyboard too effectively. It was just rather convenient because all I had to do was drive a car, and then also you ended up having your stuff. So everything kind of aligned there. But the little bit of gaming I have been doing, I've actually been playing the official release of Starbound. With all of the drama surrounding No Man's Sky, I figured I'd just play a safe bet as far as a space game was concerned. So,
nice.
Nothing too exciting, but we'll be very excited to stream regularly next week. It'll be fun.
Yeah, it's going to be a good time. And I mean, it's funny you mentioned No Man's Sky because that's one of the games that I've been playing a lot of. I picked it up on PS4, so I've been playing a lot on PS4, along with Destiny and the Titanfall 2 tech test. It just started today, and it's running to Sunday, and I'm like jumping into that, and like pretty much for some reason Overwatch got pushed to the curb for like a week, and I finally realized today, I'm looking through the patch notes, and I'm like, I haven't played a minute on this patch. Like, it's weird because I logged in to get my rewards for Season 1, but, like, I haven't played a ton. And I'm like, this is the first week in, like, months since the game came back in February where I haven't played Overwatch. It's really weird, but...
Well, it's kind of funny because this is, as far as I'm concerned, more or less like the dead week because we'll get into it, but the official patch notes for this week was literally, like, one thing, and it was a bug fix.
Yeah.
Because the season ended... Everybody's just winding down, so it's just been people kind of relaxing and playing casual, waiting for the next ridiculous, huge patch that's coming. But we'll get into that.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those transition times where you're getting done with one season and they're implementing changes for another season, and it just so this patch dropped. But as far as like the official patch was concerned, it was just like, yeah, we fixed some bugs, and they did some balancing, and we'll get into that when we cover the patch notes. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of a dead week, and I mean, we do our first segment, with competitive, and there's not a ton. Normally you're like, well, we've got like 7 results and we've got like 86 acquisitions. But I mean, like, as far as competitive goes in the acquisitions department, it was announced that Team YP now has an Overwatch team. For those of you who are of the grown-up variety and have followed Dota and a couple other CSGO, being predominantly in CSGO, Team YP equals YouPorn. So YouPorn now has an Overwatch team, and I know that they are banned in a couple major competitions by some organizations and brands, so it'll be interesting to see if they're able to actually effectively participate in these events, because YouPorn, even though they're esports, they kind of are one of those controversial brands, and so they have an Overwatch team. Another team that we talk a lot about, Creation Esports, as of about 23 hours ago, was picked up by Dignitas. And those of you who follow a lot of esports know Dignitas is a pretty heavy hitter. So they picked up a really good roster. Creation is constantly top 3, both NA and EU side. I mean, they're an EU team, but they compete a lot of NA events, and they do really well. And then the other big acquisition, we covered them a couple weeks ago in the power rankings. We don't really cover the Oceanic and Asian region a lot because it's very volatile still and there's not a lot coming out of it. But Untitled Spreadsheet, which was arguably the top team in Australia, got picked up by Tempo Storm. And they actually created a Tempo Storm Aussie branch of it. So Untitled Spreadsheet is now Tempo Storm, which is really interesting because Tempo Storm, for those of you who don't know much about the history, Raynad, who is a Hearthstone player, super successful streamer. The guy makes like $80 zillion an hour whenever he streams. Decided, I'm going to create an esports brand. Created Tempo Storm. They had a really good Hearthstone team. They then picked up Symbiote Gaming and Heroes of the Storm and created the biggest and baddest roster probably for a year. It was really painful. Yeah, it was painful to play against them because I know both of us on our teams, we played against Symbiote, and it was just not fun.
Well, it was funny, too, because that was back when I was on Nexus Champ, and they were actually like our in-house scrim team when they were Symbiotes. So we would play against them, I don't know, 3 or 4 times a week, and every single time it was like, man, they whipped the shit out of us because they're the best team in the scene, but it's good, man. Like, just a long time they dominated.
Yep. So, I mean, Tempo Storm now has an Aussie team, so that's really interesting that they reached out. Raynad reached out and his management team. But, I mean, they picked up a really good roster, albeit a little untested because they haven't competed outside of Australian tournaments simply because the ping on stateside servers and European servers is just really high for them. But that's really cool that Tempo Storm's now in the mix. As far as competitive results go, there really was only 2 major events this past weekend, and it was the E-League Overwatch Open for both North America and EU. And those of you who know E-League and Face It, that's the huge $300,000 tournament that's going to be televised. The finals will be televised. So the fourth qualifiers happened. On the EU side, Luminosity qualified. Now, those of you who are following along with these roster changes, Luminosity used to be an NA organization. They are now an EU organization. They qualified with We United picking up second, and Dignitas is leading the point standings for non-qualified teams with 56 points. I still have no idea what the cap is. All I know is that they are the top non-qualified team right now. And then on the NA side for the fourth qualifiers, Complexity, which used to be TSM, which used to be Code 7, which used to be Gale Force Esports, which was Code 7 before. Anyways, Complexity qualified. Liquid was second with Energy, which used to be Luminosity, which used to be let's just cut out all that. Esports! Energy is leading the point standings for non-qualified teams with 64 points. And then upcoming this weekend, the ESL Atlantic Showdown, which had been getting played out for like weeks upon weeks, the playoffs, or I guess group stages, is going on tomorrow, the 20th of August, with the playoffs happening on the 21st of August. The groups have been released. In Group A, you have Misfits, Fnatic, Envious, and Dignitas, formerly Creation. And then Group B, you have Reunited, Complexity, formerly TSM, Cloud9, and Rogue in Group B. So it's going to be a really good time. And one thing I'm really happy about is Cloud9 and Envious are not in the same groups. So they will be able to potentially meet in the playoffs. But I mean, I wanted to ask you, this isn't in the show notes, but I'm going to ask because it was something I was thinking about as I typed this up. These 8 teams, these 2 groups, now that the groups have been released, who do you think has the best chance to finish top 2 in each group and move on into the playoffs based off of what we've seen so far in the last couple of months?
Ooh, that's a good question. I mean, obviously, the freebies out of each group are Envious and Cloud9. It would be very surprising if those weren't safe bets, you know what I mean? But as far as the second would be concerned, that's a little bit tricky. I guess they're Dignitas now, but Creation Esports has been putting up some really, really impressive matches. So I would like to say for Group A, it would probably be Envious and Dignitas, though I would not necessarily be too surprised if Fnatic took it. And then for Group B, man, once again, really tight, but I'd have to put my vote on Complexity. I mean, once again, we're just looking at numbers and names that we see every single week in these results, and I feel like those are probably what I would put my money on. Group A being Envious, Dignitas, and then Group B being Complexity, Cloud9.
Yeah. And I mean, those are pretty safe picks. My wild pick was that Envious is going to come out of Group A, but then Misfits is going to be the other team that comes out of Group B or Group A, just because they put up a lot of results. They were one of the first teams to qualify. Granted,
really talented players. Too.
They are. They are. The biggest knock on them is that they qualified early, so they really didn't have a couple extra weeks of experience like other teams that recently qualified, more recently, like Reunited, and Dignitas. They're more battle tested. They have more experience. But I think Envious and Misfits are going to be the two for Group A. And then for Group B, obviously, it's a no-brainer, Cloud9. Even though they haven't been playing as well now that the one hero limit is official across the board, I'm kind of concerned about their ability to adapt with that because they've kind of been getting beaten on a little bit. But because I'm a Cloud9 fanboy, it's going to be Cloud9. Complexity, I want to go with them, but the problem is Rogue is also so good, and a lot of these teams don't play each other because they're North American and EU, which I guess is the beauty of this tournament is you get two regions put together. But I mean, for Group A, I'm probably going to have to go Cloud9 and Rogue, just because I don't know if Complexity can pull it out. And they might surprise us, and it might end up being Complexity and Rogue. Cloud9 might just fall on their faces. I really hope not, but we shall see. But, I mean, that's it for competitive. I mean, there was one event that happened this week. There was some stuff on the China and Korea side that happened, but it just, I mean, it was more like practice for Korea. I looked at the results. I watched some of the stuff. I couldn't understand what was going on. But it was just more like scrims and practices that got televised, and they're paying out like $225 to each weekly winner. I don't really follow the team, so I don't know that stuff. But other than that, there wasn't really much going on. Gamescom is the big thing. With that being said, at Gamescom, they did announce there is a map upcoming. There's going to be a new map. It's going to be a hybrid map. For those of you who are keen on those, it's akin to Numbandi and King's Row, where you have to capture the payload and then push it. And it is called Eichenwald. Eichenwald takes place in a European town. It's very Bavarian and Germanic. It's one of those where you get this European town. You have to capture the payload, which is a giant hovering battering ram, and you have to push it along. From what I got, one of the points is you hit a gate into a castle, and the checkpoint is you break down the gate, you push the payload through this old abandoned European castle, with the final checkpoint being a throne room where there is it looks like Reinhardt armor. Something you'd see like a Reinhardt or an Overwatch trooper like Reinhardt wearing. Interestingly enough, they did announce that this is going to be the next Reinhardt legendary armor, but it looks
so good. Oh my god. It is absolutely beautiful. I've been drooling over it.
Yeah. So Eichenwald, we don't know when it's going to happen. I can't wait because I think it's going to become one of my favorite maps because I absolutely love European culture and all of that stuff. I mean, when you saw this video, what went through your mind?
Well, actually, I watched a little bit more than the video. I've watched about an hour or 2 hours of people actually playing on the map from Gamescom.
Oh, from Gamescom,
and so I am super excited for it. Definitely is in Germany. It's in the Black Forest. It's where Reinhardt's from. And then, it's this hybrid style map. The first point, you capture the battering ram. Second point, you batter down the gate, and then the third final point is where you push it up to the throne, which is where Reinhardt's new armor is at. And what's really crazy about the map is particularly the first and the third points. They are really just there are a lot of options. There are a lot of tight corridors and hallways, so it feels like melee characters and mid-range characters will do well, but it's just so spread out, and there are so many routes. I mean, it's madness. It's what you wish Temple of Isis looked like. You know what I mean?
There you go.
So it's crazy watching gameplay because there's so many different strategies, and flankers seem like they're so powerful on the map, but it is breathtaking. There are tons of buildings to explore. It just looks really high action. It's less of that King Row pushing it down a hallway and a lot more of small skirmishes and then pushing the payload after. So it's a map I'm really excited for. I mean, I'm a tank player,
Yeah.
So I like those extended skirmishes around the map.
It's fun. I haven't had the luxury of watching the gameplay just because my week has been so crazy, but I'm really gonna have to watch that because all I've seen is the trailer, and I watched it like 3 or 4 times, and I'm like, oh, this is gonna be so sick. Like, I'm prior military. I lived in Europe for a few years. Like, I absolutely love the European culture and the art, like the feel, and just going through the map and the camera, just going through to the different points. It just felt like that small town Europe feel, and I long to live that again, so I guess the closest I'm going to get for a while is this map. I can't wait for it. Like, I want
Oh, you're gonna
this,
love it, man.
I want this map to happen. But it's going to be awesome. And then the armor is coming out too. I don't know if they gave an official release date. Maybe I was dreaming and they said August 23rd. I'm not sure. But
I don't think it was August 23rd. I want to say it was September 23rd. But I definitely do remember it being the 22nd or the 23rd. It's either this month or next month. Probably next month.
It's going to happen. It's going to happen. Also, there was a new animated short released this week entitled The Last Bastion. And it revolved around everyone's favorite robot Bastion and his bird companion. It was very... It punched me right in the feels because Bastion... He wakes up in a forest. He looks around. He can't really remember exactly what happened. All he knows is there's this point he's supposed to go in his internal GPS and nav sensors. It says, get here. So he starts following there. He kind of has like a PTSD flashback. I didn't know robots could have that. That something happened. He turns into a sentry, mows everything down in the forest, scares the wildlife away, gets to this... field outside of the forest where he sees Nimbani off in the distance, and he's like, oh, so he starts walking. He sees like this busted up Bastion unit on the ground, so he uses his little self-repair to repair it. Sees that, oh my god, like the Bastions and the Omnics were fighting against a bunch of Reinhardts and like it looked like Overwatch troopers, and he goes into like full-on psychosis mode, like I'm gonna go wreck some shit in Numbani, and his little bird friend, and I can never remember the name of the bird, shows up.
It's a really weird name. I want to say it's like Greymead or something like that.
Yeah,
it's really weird.
It's like Greymead.
It's
I don't know.
Greymede, like Grey. Yeah, it's weird.
Something. But shows up and like hands him a piece of a nest he had been building on Bastion, and Bastion kind of was like, what? And so he kind of comes to his senses and goes back into the forest with Greymead, his little canary yellowbird friend. I mean, this was probably one of the saddest and most feel-tastic shorts that they have released yet, from one of the most reviled characters in the game. And maybe it'll make him less reviled because people are like, oh, he's so sweet, he woke up in a forest. Oh, but it's probably one of my favorites simply because it was just so thematically and cinematically well done. I absolutely loved this short. Like, even though it was revolved around Bastion, I thought it was put together so well, especially because it had 0 words in it. It was no words whatsoever. It was just Bastion and a bird. How did you feel when you first saw this short?
I loved it, first off. But I was really surprised at how emotional and strong it felt. Nothing against Blizzard. I mean, that's kind of what we come to expect from them. It's Blizzard, you know what I mean? But when you think of Bastion, you're not really expecting a whole lot of emotional depth, you know what I mean? So that was really, really surprising for me. And as I mentioned earlier with a lot of these animated shorts, the things that I really like are the in-game callbacks. And the ones that were really strong in this video that I liked a lot were, first off, the fact that, yeah, he's marching towards New Bombay. It's like really easy to tell. It's the outline of the city. It's wildly familiar. Then I also liked how at the end, when Greymead, or whatever the bird's name is flying around him, he actually does that emote, his original launch emote, the one where the bird flies around him and he spins and he like falls over. So just absolutely love that. I mean, it's just all the little details in it are what really made me enjoy it. And it's just, that's what I think Blizzard does a really good job of. That's what makes you connect with the characters. That's what makes you identify with them. I mean, just every single little detail. The fact that it wasn't just he touched the memory unit on the other sentry. It was his repair finger, all that. It's just the little things really make it for me. And the other thing is it's the overgrown skin that you get with the upgraded edition when you buy it as well. Yep. And so I like all the incorporation. And now you can appreciate that skin a little bit more when you see it too.
Yep. Yep, and I was using that skin a lot until I got Steambot, and I might even go back to Overgrowth just because I liked it. I thought it was a good looking skin. It didn't make a whole lot of sense at first, but now like it all clicks. So it was a really, really good short. So those two things happened this week. Also, a minor little thing happened this week. I don't know if you guys are aware, but competitive season 1 ended. It ended, in fact, yesterday at 4 p.m. Pacific time.
We were in a match when it happened. We were in the middle of a ranked match, and the whole game just stops, and everybody gets in the thing, and we're like, do we keep playing? What happens?
Nice.
Like,
yeah, and they said that was going to happen for those people who were in games. It was going to pop up like your end of season rewards, and like they were apologized ahead of time that it wasn't going to be more graceful in releasing the rewards, but they did say it was going to happen. I logged in and got my rewards on both of my accounts. It was funny because my rank 49 account only got 40 competitive points, but my rank 60 account got like I think 220. So it was like, all right, well, I played 10 games on that account, or 12 games on that account, and I got, almost 6 times the points. Sweet. But there is going to be a competitive Season 2. It's going to start on September 6th, and that was one of the big, meaty sections of this patch. If you want to start going over what the competitive changes are for Season 2, there are a lot of them, and I think that a lot of them are good, too.
So Jeff Kaplan released a video on the Overwatch YouTube breaking down the changes that they're officially rolling into Season 2 and things that we can expect. And there is quite a lot of it. One of the biggest things they're doing is that they're taking the whole 1 to 100 skill rating system, which also, for the record, I should have wrote this in the show notes. I thought it was really interesting that he mentioned that players who scored a 60 or up were actually in the top 8% of player percentile, and like that's how skewed the actual system was. So I just thought that was an interesting tidbit. Made me feel a little bit better about my 54, you know what I mean? But they're changing that whole system. It's going to be a 1 to 5,000 scale, and it's going to be broken down into different tiers. The tiers are going to be as follows. 1 to 1,500 is going to be bronze, 1,500 to 2,000 is silver, gold will be 2,000 to 2,500, 2,500 to 3,000 will be platinum, 3,000 to 3,500 will be diamond, 35 to 4,000 will be master, and grandmaster will be 4,000 to 5,000. Players in bronze, silver, gold, and platinum will not drop out of their tiers, even if you drop below the skill rating. So if you get in gold or platinum, you place in there and you drop down, you won't actually move beyond that. However, players in master and grandmaster will suffer decay and can drop out, which is something very interesting and worth noting. I think it's good because you won't really see this happened a lot in the League of Legends. They had to change it there too, where players would just grind up to a really high bracket and then just sit there clogging up, taking slots, not really playing or losing a bunch of rating. So I think that's a good system to implement there too. Another big thing is they're getting rid of sudden death in Season 2. It's just boom, done. Instead, matches that are tied will just end in a draw. They're not really expecting this to happen a lot, which I think is really important because I didn't see a whole lot of ties. And whenever you did, it was just like, oh no, coin flip, please no. You know what I mean? So instead, if you get a draw, both teams will earn like a victory credit, but just not as much experience and competitive points as they would otherwise. Players who haven't participated in a competitive match for 7 days will also immediately drop out of the top 500. Another thing, they're doing some map changes. Several refinements have been made to the time bank system for Hanamura, Temple of Anubis, and Volskaya. The time bank system has been added to Dorado, Hollywood, Kings Row, New Bombay, Route 66, and Watchpoint Gibraltar as well. Time granted for taking objectives on Dorado, Hanamura, Hollywood, Kings Row, New Bombay, Route 66, and Temple of Anubis, as well as Volskaya Industries and Watchpoint Gibraltar, have been reduced from 5 minutes to 4 minutes. And then as far as competitive points are concerned, because once again, they're overhauling the entire system, everything is getting multiplied by 10. Kaplan didn't really explain why this was happening, but that's just kind of the case. So any competitive points you already have will be multiplied by 10. The cost of golden weapons will be multiplied by 10. The amount that you gain or lose from a match will be multiplied by 10. So all of that is going up. They're also putting a soft cap on the amount of competitive points that can be saved. And players with more than 6,000 points at the start of Season 2 will no longer accrue points by playing competitive matches. And end of season rewards will still be granted to people with soft caps. So the amount you get bonus if you've hit the soft cap will still be given to you at the end of the season. Let's see here. You must also play at least 50 competitive matches to be eligible for a spot in the top 500. Players must now play more matches to get rid of their leaver penalty as well. And drastically different skill ratings, like a difference of more than 500, will no longer be able to queue together in competitive matches. So you'll have to be closer in skill rating with the people you want to play with. But that should sum it up for all of the huge changes coming to Ranked Season 2, and I am personally really, really excited about it. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think the changes they made are very needed. I didn't like the 1 to 100 system. I liked what it was compared to what it was in closed beta, where they had the, everybody gets a participation medal, and then once you hit a certain rank, then you can climb and whatnot. But the 1 to 100 still felt really weird, because when you looked at the bell curve and you looked at like where the majority of people were, they weren't at 50. Like normally you're used to seeing the majority of people being in bronze and silver, and then it kind of goes down in kind of layman's terms, the like 1 to maybe 30 or 35 on that 1 to 100 scale, but nobody was below like 30. You had, and I say nobody, there were some people, but the vast majority of people were like 35 to 59. And then beyond that, like you said, the top 8% was 60 and above, and nobody hit 100. Nobody got above 92. Like, I didn't like the system. So I'm really hoping that this 1 to 5,000 that they're doing really kind of fixes that.
It was just so vague. It really was. Like, it was really hard. That's why I was so blown away when he was like 60 and up is the top 8 percentile. Yeah. I was like, really? That low is the top? Why is it 60 then?
And it was weird. So I like the system they're going to, and the whole increasing or multiplying by 10. It's whatever. You're gonna amass competitive points for wins anyways, and end of season rewards. My biggest thing was, adding this tier system, because it works. I mean, I don't know why they wanted to get away from it. It worked in Brood War, it worked in StarCraft 2, League of Legends picked it up. I mean, even Dota has their Elo system that works, and it looks like Blizzard is doing the same thing. It's not necessarily an Elo system, but it looks kind of like it. So the 1 to 5,000 allows people to be spaced out a lot more, gives a lot more kind of breathing room and certain tiers. My biggest concern is that people will then get bunched up in like silver, gold, and platinum, but we'll see. I mean, I really think the changes they made, and then getting rid of the coin flip, where pretty much at the lower levels, even at the higher levels, if you got attack on coin flip, pretty much I think they said like 77% of the time you won. That it was like, yeah, if you do away with that, now you're going to get ties. You still get rewarded for it, just not as much as a win. You don't get punished for a loss. I mean, I think they kind of are moving in the right direction with Season 2. And it'll be interesting to kind of actually get into the season and see how it plays out. But, I mean, I think they're really good. I mean, I like the changes.
I agree entirely. Really, I think the biggest thing is, I guess I didn't really realize it, but with the way the system was set up, I mean, somebody who could be skill rating 52 versus somebody who's like skill rating 54, that, it turns out, with the current system or the Season 1 system, was actually like a huge gap in skill difference. So actually being able to break it down and like very specifically see where everyone sits, it'll be easier to climb. You won't feel as bad when you lose. I mean, I think it's going to be a much better system.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm looking forward to playing in the next season. I mean, admittedly, I didn't play a ton these last couple of weeks, just because on my kind of solo queue account, I was ranked 60, and I was happy with that. And then on my other account, we got stuck between, for me, it was between 43 and 48. Once I hit a high of 49 on that first account, and it's interesting that they use stats, because on both of my accounts, they had similar quick play ratios. I think it was like 57% win rate. I went 7-3 in both placements. I got placed in 60 on one and 49 on the other. So, it'll be interesting to see how much I play in this next system, because I love playing competitive. You and I are both the same. Like if it's competitive,
yeah.
we just preferred to play it over quick play because for me it was more relaxing because people took it more seriously and it felt more like Overwatch and less like Cheese Watch. Like
I've been having this argument with like the last day of ranked being up. I was having this argument with Lucius and Mike about whether competitive was actually more stressful than casual. Because in my opinion, casual is way more stressful than competitive because it's just like weird comps and there's no real rhyme or reason to it. But like even in competitive, it's like, you know, people are generally trying to do one thing, so it feels more like a game to me. I just like it more.
Yeah, I do too. And it's funny because we had this talk with a couple friends that were like, one of them was vehemently against one hero limit, and one was like, you can't enjoy Overwatch without one hero limit. And we were all like, you know what, it doesn't matter. Overwatch is Overwatch. And like I was super vague about my opinion because it's like, if you have one hero limit, that's Overwatch. You got to be creative, and if you don't, that's Overwatch. You got to be creative. And now that they have one hero limit, I see the beauty in it. It makes me appreciate competitive that much more. And if I want to go, be an absolute douche nozzle and go, 576s in a Lucio, we can go do that in quick play and still, both modes are still Overwatch. But for me, it's a lot less stressful to play competitive. And I don't know why. Like most games, people take it super seriously, but I think most games don't have the limits like Overwatch does, where, okay, well, you want to take it seriously, you can't pick, 4 divas and just stall out that last point on Hanamura, and just use your jet to get in there. It's like you actually have to play and counter your team's picks. So it's really cool. And I like it. And, I like competitive. So the changes they made, I'm looking forward to testing them out. So,
Season 2 hype.
Season 2 hype, and it's going to be a good time. There were other changes in this patch. I have dubbed this patch the Rest in Peace Genji patch, and we'll kind of go over why. And there was a kind of a big outcry in the community on, they ran Genji into the ground and blah, 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 and you know what, cry me a river. But we're going to go over why he is more stable now, I guess, and less overpowered in some people's eyes. And there actually have been a lot of Genji mains that have come out and said he never really was overpowered. These changes just made him a little bit more easier to deal with and more manageable. But we'll go ahead and jump into this. There were some small changes, like when activating the ultimate status communication for Symmetra, she's now going to report the number of charges left on her teleporter. She has 6. You can use the teleporter 6 times before it gets destroyed without the enemy finding it. So now she will report how many charges she has left, and that's really cool so that you don't run at it and get those like sad tiny violin spots where you're running at the teleporter behind a teammate and he uses the last charge, and now you're like, you stop because the teleporter's gone. You're like, oh, now I got to use my legs. So that's really cool. When activating the needs healing communication while targeting a teammate, the supports that heal, aka Ana, Lucio, Mercy, and Zenyatta, will now tell allies to group up to receive healing, and a marker will appear above the player's head, allowing the teammates to locate the healer more quickly. And most importantly on these general changes, sit and laugh emotes are now unlockable for all heroes. So spam and BM to your heart's content, but don't forget this is Blizzard, so once you sit or laugh, you are locked into it till the end of the animation, so don't BM in front of an enemy. Let's see here. All general ultimates that consume the ultimate meter when activated will now drain the meter more quickly. Instead of 1 second, it will be a quarter of a second. And they reverted a recent change to reduce the size of the hero's projectiles, and they were finding that it made it harder for a lot heroes to hit that had larger projectile hitboxes. They're still kind of wrestling with that. The Hanzo / Widowmaker problem they were running into, where the projectiles had really large hitboxes and they reduced them, and it kind of was a really big hit to Hanzo and Widowmaker. They're still playing around with that. So they reverted a change that was reducing those hitboxes. They're still fooling with those. Character-specific changes. D.Va with her defense matrix. After being activated, defense matrix will begin regenerating following a 1 second delay. It was half a second. Not a big change there, just kind of evening her out a little bit. Hanzo will experience a 30% decrease in speed while aiming instead of 40%. And his maximum projectile speed has been increased by 30%. For you Hanzo mains out there, you can now blindly fire scatter arrows around a corner faster, and they will hit your victims faster. Mei's Blizzard, it will now pierce barriers. And
which is huge.
Yeah, and the radius has been increased from 8 meters to, like, what? Her radius was huge, and now they made it even huger. We're going to stop here so we can cover these first three. Between Mei, Hanzo, and Diva, which one do you think is going to be the most game-changing change they made? And will it have any impact on the upper levels?
For me, I think the Mei change is going to be big. In the developer insights, the logic behind the defense matrix change is that it was just too efficient when being spammed versus held. So I don't think that's going to change too much. The idea with Hanzo is they liked where his power is, but that he felt too consistent at mid-range. So speeding up the projectile should make him just better at mid-range. It'll be harder for people to dodge. Makes sense. However, the Mei buff just really surprises me, because I think one of the big reasons we don't see her in competitive is if they have a Reinhardt, if they have a Winston, something like that, you're not going to land your barrier because it's just going to bounce off the shield. So the fact that it can now pierce barriers, I think is gigantic. Literally might be a big enough change to see her hit competitive meta, just because it was so easy to stop before, and it's just so powerful. I mean, any of those AoE ultimates, like look at Zarya, Graviton Surge, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Any like wombo combo AoE ultimate is huge, and the fact that they're buffing it to the point where you can't block it with a barrier, I think is going to change the game pretty significantly.
I agree. I think the Mei change is going to really kind of impact, because there was a lot of good Mei players out there. I know that I watched Seagull on his stream. He used to play, or he still does, play every character, and when he played Mei, you're just like, what? Like, this guy is good at, like, why do you not see Mei at the upper levels? And it's because she could just be stopped. Like, she's got her freeze, which her primary fire doesn't have a super long range on it, so you could just kind of range her. And then her ultimate, you saw Reinhardt and Winston. I mean, it couldn't pierce those barriers, and then you could just kind of get out of it. Especially like if you're a Diva, you can just jet out of it, or if you're a Zarya, you can, shield it, and then you're immune from the movement impairing effects for 2 seconds and get out of it, and then, I think that's going to be a game changer out of those three. And I like this pacing we're doing, so we're going to do it in 3 because there are 9 hero changes. So the next group of 3, McCree with his Deadeye now drains over a quarter-second period, and instead of displaying a 50% reduction in the ultimate meter when activated and 0% when confirmed, it's just going to drain. So if he doesn't use it, it drains a lot faster. Mercy with her Caduceus staff, her healing beam per second has been increased by 20%. So when she's on a single target with her healing beam, it heals 20% faster. And her resurrected allies will now be able to maneuver after 2.25 seconds, which is reduced from 3 seconds. I'm going to get back to that one on my thoughts, because there's kind of a big thing people don't realize. The next person is Genji. We're saving him for the last round because this is the Rest in Peace Genji patch.
It is the biggest change for sure.
Yep. Lucio with his Amp It Up. The boosting of movement speed has been decreased by 30% from a 100% increase to a 70% increase. So out of those 3, between Lucio, Mercy, and McCree, which one really is going to have the biggest effect? The 3, what are your thoughts on those 3 overall?
As far as McCree is concerned, I think it's totally fair. As far as other potentially cancelable ults, that's the exact way that the meter works on them. McCree was the only one who got this 50% refund. So as far as it being high noon, a little less, I'm okay with it. I think it should function like everybody else's does. So I'm okay with that. As far as the Lucio nerf is concerned, it's honestly probably warranted. Movement speed is one of those non-combat stats that's really hard for the average player to, really feel the value of. But at high-level play, I mean, movement speed is huge. That's why you see him in most of the comps. And even in the developer insights, that was kind of their logic behind it, is the movement speed is so valuable, he's just 100% pick rate. So we need to try to tone it down a little bit. Yeah. They're not really hitting his effectiveness. They're just making it not as extreme. So I don't think it'll remove him out of, always pick, always ban, but I think it'll help vary it up a little bit. The Mercy buffs, I think, are really healthy. I've been talking with a few of my friends who do some competitive and who have been playing on PTR with these changes, And from what I'm hearing, the Mercy buffs feel really good. She is the best single target healer in the game with the 20% buff, and the Resurrect is that almost full second difference really helps in team fights. Like that's a lot quicker reaction time. It's a lot less time for the enemy to respond. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't necessarily know if it'll dethrone Zenyatta, and I'll talk about it a little bit more when we get to Zenyatta, the changes they're doing to him. But I am expecting to see comps now that instead of just Lucio Zenyatta like it has been for the past month and a half, it will see Lucio Zenyatta, Lucio Mercy, Mercy Zenyatta. I think we'll see a fairly solid mix between the three.
Yeah. My biggest thing, and I said I was going to come back to it, Mercy's Resurrect. They lowered the time that allies can maneuver from 3 seconds to 2.25 seconds. What they did not do is lower the invulnerability that those resurrected allies get. So it's still 3 seconds. So they have 3/4 of a second to maneuver, and they're still invulnerable after being rezzed. That, for me, on the competitive side, is huge because in a Mercy res, those 3 seconds of not being able to move, well, now you're able just to line up and just mow people down again. I think the last 2 changes they made, her being able to move while resurrecting, and now the resurrected allies able to move almost a full second while they're still invulnerable, that is probably going to bring her back up. I don't know if it's going to make her a must pick again. I think the changes they're making are making it so that there are no must picks, because after the last patch, it was pretty much in the meta reports, Planet Overwatch or Captain Planet that we had on, he does his meta reports. Pretty much the last 2 weeks have been the S tier heroes. The only ones are Lucio and Zenyatta. S tier being 95 to 100% pick rate. Like nobody else out of the 22 heroes in the game, Lucio and Zenyatta were the only 2 S tier heroes. So this might bring Mercy back up again, and it's funny because people look at this and they're like, oh, whatever. That healing per second is huge, first off. And then the 2 changes to Resurrect, the last patch and this patch, it's going to make her incredibly viable now because she just, she can res an entire team, and they can move and kill you for almost a full second before you can even deal damage to them. So it's that, to me, is kind of the game changer out of these 3. I mean, McCree, nobody ever hit dead eyes anyways, who cares? But and then Lucio, I mean, he still has a speed boost. He's still situational pretty much in every situation because I love Lucio. King's Row, I'm still going to use him, to amp it up and get that speed boost through that first checkpoint by the bus, because it drives me crazy when we just sit by the bus and then nobody moves. With Lucio, we'll be able to push people through that choke point faster, so we'll be able to contest that first point. But I mean, the Mercy buff, or the Mercy change, is probably the biggest buff out of those 3, in my opinion.
Overall, I really like it too, because if we look at the past few changes they've been doing with Mercy, they've made Resurrect like a better spell mechanically to use, and they still kept the nerf on the charge time. And so honestly, I like it because it's not one of the situations where we're seeing a Resurrect every single push. But, when we do see Resurrect, it's most of the time 5-man reses, and it's really impactful. So I think the Balance team is doing a really good job with the changes they're making to Mercy. I think it's really intelligent.
I like it. And then the last 3 characters, we held one for the last. We're going to keep him last because, like I said, I will repeat for the second time, this is the Rest in Peace Genji patch. Roadhog's Chain Hook. Before, you could hook somebody when you didn't have vision of them because it was a visual bug because of the difference on server side between, attacker and defender, and it always goes to the shooter, while in a hook that's considered a shot. If the hook target isn't in Roadhog's line of sight, when retracting the hook, they will be moved back to the position where they were originally hooked. So he cannot pull them around walls. He cannot pull them up, the side of...
Thank God.
Yeah. So, I mean, no more blind hooks where you're like, what just happened? So that's cool. Zenyatta's Orb of Discord. The amount of damage amplified by a target with Orb of Discord has been decreased from 50% to 30%, and his Orb of Destruction, the damage has been increased from 40 to 46. So those are some good changes. Before we get into the final change, Roadhog, you said thank God. I definitely
Yeah.
agree. Having those blind hooks and getting pulled was never any fun. And then Zenyatta, they're just kind of rounding him out because his Orb of Discord, like, that hit like a truck. He effectively was a sniper, and people were using him as a sniper and not as a support, especially, again, with the last patch where they increased the velocity of his orbs from 30 to 120. It's, decreasing the amount of damage buff or increase on Orb of Discord, I think is the right move. And I'm sure you would probably agree too. It still makes him powerful, but it just doesn't make him overpowered in certain situations.
I thought this was another one where the designer insight was really, really insightful in that the way that it's balanced with the lowering of Orb of Discord's damage amp, but the increase of his attack damage, his one-on-one potential is pretty much unchanged. If you're just fighting a person one-on-one, you're not going to feel any difference. However, it's not one of those things where you're always picking Zenyatta because he melts tanks, because he doesn't melt tanks as fast. So they're not really changing his personal effectiveness, but they're changing his team effectiveness. And I don't necessarily... I think it's fine. I don't think it hurts him that much. Damage amp is still extremely useful, especially in this meta that is really controlled by tanks. But I think they're trying to make it so there's no just core support group. I think they really want to see those three main supports rotate around. And I think with the buffs to Mercy, especially to Resurrect, I think with the balancing on Zenyatta, because yes, it's a nerf technically speaking, but I think it's more of a rebalance in how it actually plays. And then with the nerf to Lucio, I think we're actually going to see a good rotation, and that's something I'm excited for. It's healthy. Yep. And then as far as Roadhog's concerned, and as somebody who likes to play Roadhog, it was unhealthy. Yeah. Like, even if you were the Roadhog and you were landing those hooks, you felt bad about it. You know what I mean? Because somebody would be gone, and you just happen to hit them as they were moving barely with the hook, and you just pull them around the side of a building. I mean, it was ridiculous. So it was, not fun to have it played against you, and it wasn't exactly rewarding to use it either. So I'm glad that they're finally addressing that.
Yeah, and I mean, it wasn't a big hit to Zenyatta. His two biggest issues before were... his Transcendence was super overpowered, but once it was out, you just nail him because he had 150 health, and that was the second issue. So he's got 200 health now, and his Transcendence it's got a lot of utility, like 300% move speed buff. That's cool. So they didn't touch that because obviously those changes were good for him. People were then abusing his damage buff. Or debuff, I guess, depending on how you look at it. So they're just making him well-rounded, and it shows that they're really trying to tweak. Which brings us to the Rest in Peace Genji patch. Why is it called Rest in Peace Genji? Because Genji had some changes this patch. First off, his double jump no longer resets when wall climbing. Okay, cool. His dash no longer deals damage to traps like Widowmaker's Venom Mine or Junkrat's Steel Trap, and it no longer bypasses Junkrat's Steel Trap. So if he tries to dash through it, he's going to get hit and stuck in Junkrat's Steel Trap. His Swift Strike no longer interrupts quick melee attacks, and his Dragon Blade, his ultimate, the duration of it has been reduced from 8 seconds to 6 seconds. I call it the Rest in Peace Genji patch because he was the one that I guess figuratively got slammed this patch, but I like the changes. I can't stand playing against good Genjis. So what are your thoughts on these changes? Where do you see Genji fitting in team comps where he used to compared to with this patch?
I especially going by the dev insights, I think this was a change mainly aimed at competitive.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is Genji is, in my opinion, probably the second highest skill cap champ in the game. I think Ana's probably a little bit harder. The thing is in quick match and things like that, Genji's not really going to be a problem for you because it's not a Genji master who's playing them. But when you're playing against somebody on live as it stands right now who's just, tons of experience on Genji, it's really difficult to deal with. It's not necessarily that he does tons of damage and is killing everybody, it's that you can't lock him down. The fact that he can jump through or dash through Junkrat's bear trap is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, that's the whole point of it. It's like an anti-Tracer thing, you know what I mean? If it can stop Tracer, there's no reason it shouldn't be able to stop Genji, and the fact that it does right now is insane. As far as the Swift Strike is concerned, they want to lower his potential insane burst combo if he gets into melee, because you can't auto-attack reset. And so for those of you who might not be super familiar with like mechanical concepts in games, What they're talking about is when you quick melee, as it stands right now, you can quick melee and then start the animation for Swift Strike and then quick melee the second you come out of it. And that's because the Swift Strike animation resets his quick melee timer. They're removing that because they don't want you to be able to get free melee hits in when you use it. They want that timer to remain. So they're trying to remove this free burst damage potential that he has.
Yeah.
And then as far as the Dragon Blade reduction, I think that's extremely fair. As it stands at 8 seconds right now, and this is also word for word what they said in the insight, there's no real hard counter to it. Like sound barrier doesn't work, graviton doesn't work. Like everything that would technically stop it doesn't last for that 8-second window. So they're trying to lower it down so that you can actually do something about it and not just, kind of lose when he Dragon Blades. So I think it's really healthy. And I will want to mention that while I think it's healthy and I also think it's extremely heavy nerf, all those Genji mains, feel free to enjoy it the next week or whatever until the Season 2 patch hits.
Yep.
But, yeah, he's going to be put in the dirt soon. Rest in peace.
Yep. And I will just save a whole lot of time and airtime by just saying Genji nerf's always a good thing.
Yeah.
I'm not good at Genji to begin with. I have his summer game skin, his Japanese skin. I think it's amazing. I'm terrible with him. With these changes, I will still be terrible, but other people won't be as good, and he will be less annoying. He'll still be good in the right hands, but he won't be, like frustratingly hard to play against anymore. So that was kind of it for the patch. There was another thing. Watchpoint Gibraltar's first checkpoint has been removed. I think that's good because it always felt super awkward. I mean, it was like you had
really weird.
Yeah, you had to push the payload like 8 feet and you hit the first checkpoint. So now, instead of pushing it down underneath the overpass, you now have to push it to the gates to get into the hangar. Cool. That, I think, is much better. It's a lot less wonky because the other payload maps didn't have that first checkpoint where it was super close. So I think that's really cool. So that just about wraps it up for patch notes and blue posts. Every week we end with Community Spotlight. Last week, before craziness happened and we had to cancel the episode, I had the Winston diss track. It was up on Reddit. It's up on Facebook. It's really funny. Go check it out. Type it into YouTube. Winston diss track. It's a really good time. Unfortunately, I don't have a thumbnail for you guys to check it out, to see a visual of it. But it's really funny. And then I know you found two that you thought were good and worth mentioning this week.
Yeah, the first one that I found, once again, these come from Reddit. When we look at community spotlights, we like to go see what's being popular and passed around. And the first one that I really liked was this animation called Junkrat Steals McCree's Hat by Mal Zuhawks. And pretty much in this video, and it's a really, really well done animation. Voices are awesome in it. Audio quality is fantastic. Is Junkrat steals McCree's hat from him while he's sleeping, and he goes to Roadhog in a bar, and he's talking to it about it. But the amount of character that's put into the animation, the way that Roadhog and Junkrat interact, and McCree when he comes in and spoiler talks about the name of his hat, the whole thing feels really organic and just very Overwatchy, quote unquote, if I'd have to put it like that. So go check it out. Junkrat steals McCree hat. Great animation. And then the other one, I wouldn't be too wildly surprised to see me have one of these in almost every week now, but it's called Anna Nanaboosts the Wrong Target by Scroll Zoom, who's somebody we've talked about a lot on Community Spotlight. And in the comic, Reinhardt's getting ready. Anna, get ready with the stim. I'm going to go in. And he puts his butt out. And then she stims the wrong target. And they look to see who dashed in front of her and who got stimmed. And there's just like Hulk roided out Gremlin Diva running around screaming nerf this, shooting people with the pistol. And I know that Scroll Zoom has had a lot in the prevalence of the Gremlin Diva meme, but just everything with it makes me laugh so hard. So just seeing that like little tiny jagged teeth running around, flexing, shooting the pistol. I love all of his comics. They're so good. So those I thought were the best community spotlights this week. And then also, just because you did have it on here, I did want to echo that the Winston diss track is absolutely hilarious. I actually like hip hop quite a bit, so I was surprised at how actually real it sounded. It was a really solid track. I wasn't expecting it to be like that hard. I was pretty surprised. So definitely go check those three things out if you haven't.
Yeah, it's a good time, and I've seen the other two. I mean, they're just Scroll Zoom always has good content. It's on Tumblr. If you look it up, it's Mark Raz, 2a's.tumblr.com. All of his content is great.
So good.
It is so good, and it's funny, and he kind of hits on kind of the misses of the community sometime, because as an Ana inept player, I like playing her, but I can't always hit my ult. Sometimes you do nano boost the wrong target, and so it's funny how that can happen. And I have nano boosted divas out of their mechs by accident sometimes, and it's just
Nerf this.
Yeah, nerf this. I will say one thing that kind of got passed around. I still haven't gotten confirmation that it wasn't just like a troll post. Is Diva's new emote where she's playing?
No, it's totally real.
I
Diva
thought so.
now.
Yeah, I thought so. But Gremlin Diva. That just like, I need to get that.
Doritos, man. MLG. Oh, it's so good. I love that. Like, don't get me wrong. I love all the Overwatch memes, especially just Derpface May.
Yeah.
But like, everybody loves Gremlin Diva. It's just so funny. It's like Gremlin Diva and Soldier 76 Dad. Those are like the most popular Overwatch memes.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just the Overwatch dev team is just really on point with a lot of their stuff. And I know that a lot of people were crazy about the Summer Games loot boxes, but you know what? I think that's subsided because there's other cool stuff to focus on, looking at the positives. So, so that is episode 24 of The Guardians. That's what happened this week. Don't forget to check out Gamescom this weekend. The final 8 teams on the Atlantic Showdown for ESL. They're playing live at Gamescom. Our friend Tifa, our co-host Tifa, is the manager for Complexity. They are there. They're competing. Make sure you watch the stream. Cheer on Complexity. Cheer on Cloud9. Cheer on anybody but boo hiss everybody who's not Cloud9. So we'll go ahead and wrap this up. Where can people find you at, and what projects are you currently working on?
As always, people can reach me on Twitter pretty easily. I'm over there. My handle's at NA1I, so really easy to reach. I'm pretty quick about responding. Then as far as during the week, you and I stream together at the same time. Normally 4 days a week, unless just really weird life stuff happens for a week straight. And you can find me there on my Twitch over at Twitch TV /HOTS1I, HOTS1I for Heroes of the Storm. Which, speaking of which, too, that was announced at Gamescom. I know it's not technically Overwatch, but they're adding Zarya to Heroes of the Storm. And oh man, yes! So hyped. So hyped. Gonna actually bust in that HOTS on the HOTS1I. It's gonna be great.
Yes.
And then the other projects I have going on is once a week on Wednesdays, the Retro Collective that I do stuff with, Multitap, we host a podcast. This week's episode was on arcade fighting games and Evo, and was a really fantastic episode. You can catch it on the Multitapped YouTube channel if you want to check it out. And then a little teaser for next week, we're doing a music episode, and we're focusing on metal. We have some really good guests lined up, some people who are really passionate about the genre. So make sure you stop by and check that out, too. That'll be on Twitch TV /Multitapped, and that starts at 9 p.m. Mountain, so that's 11 Eastern and 8 Pacific, right? I want to say. That sounds right.
Yes,
so
that's correct.
You can catch me over there.
Sweet. Yeah, and I just want to say, kind of to echo Zarya and HOTS. First off, when Tracer was announced and everyone looked at her abilities and then was able to play her before they realized she was super overpowered and they had to tweak her and nerf her a little bit, they essentially just ported the feel of Tracer at Overwatch into HOTS. So it was like, oh my god, like Tracer, Overwatch Tracer, not just like another character Tracer. Like, she's in the game. Zarya's kit is Zarya. Like,
identical.
You watch that and you're like, okay, that's like, I got excited. Like, I was super big into Heroes of the Storm before, and then it kind of cooled off, and it was just mainly because of like the community kind of rubbed me the wrong way. But like, not only with the Zarya, but also the 2 new maps for StarCraft that they announced,
so good.
And even Alarak looks cool too. But Zarya, like, she's my Overwatch baby, and will always be, even though Diva's currently tops on my food chain. Like, Zarya will always be my baby, and so now I get to play her in Heroes of the Storm. Like, count me in. Like, I'm gonna save up some money for that. So that's gonna be really good. But as for me, because that was really long-winded tangent, you can find me on Twitch at Veritechgg. You can find me on YouTube, youtube.com/Veritechgg. You can find me streaming every now and then on Beam, a new platform. I don't know if you guys know what Beam is, but it was recently acquired by Microsoft this past week. Beam.pro/Veritechgg. I don't stream there very often, but it is a good time. It is fun. It's a great platform. You can find me on Twitter at Veritechgg, and my wife and I just recently started daily vlogging with our kids, and if you want the channel, I can probably include it in the description for what we're going over today in the YouTube notes. But that's what I've been doing. And again, for the Guardians, you can catch us every Friday, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, right here on YouTube and on Twitch. You guys are watching right now. And we also upload to Spreaker, which simultaneously gives the audio uploads to iTunes and Google Music. Search for The Guardians. We are one of the top results. We have 23 episodes uploaded to there because I was an idiot and accidentally deleted episode 1, kind of testing stuff. So we have 23 episodes and counting on there. You can see us on there, you can hear us on there, you can do all of the things on there. But for my buddy One Eye and myself, I am Veritech, saying we will see you guys next Friday right here on The Guardians. In the meantime, play safe, play Farah.